the big headline, this is a national head-to-head poll, is that Vice President Kamala Harris had a 5-point lead in our last poll taken a month ago, right after the debate. That lead has all but evaporated, Willie. Take a look at this new head-to-head matchup. 48% to 48%. That is what we call a deadlocked race. It underscores what we all know, that this is tight, that the country is sharply divided. One of the other big headlines here, people are viewing the Trump presidency more favorably than the Biden presidency. Why is that significant? We've seen the vice president get pressed repeatedly on what she would do differently than President Biden, and she's really struggled with that answer.
There is a lot to unpack there, and Stu Burguiere does this every single day. And so we're going to put you on the spot now and do it here for Blaze News Tonight, because as she said, 48 to 48 in that latest poll that they saw, things are extremely tight. And you've said that you think that this is really, really close right now.
I do. I mean, and I think, you can always find a poll that you like for your candidate, or one that you hate for your candidate. That's one of the reasons we came up with this idea for the pulse cast, which is like putting your finger on the pulse of all of it. The election models, the prediction markets, these polling averages, all the data, and looking at it so we can get kind of an idea as to what does it really look at. And there's a real narrative to the race since Kamala Harris got into it. She got into the race. Obviously, Trump was way ahead of Biden. She got into the race, got that nice media bump, got that afterglow of the announcement. Democrats getting excited. She sort of took a very slight lead. That started to fade. The boomlet was dead. It popped, came back down. And actually, in the pulse cast, Donald Trump took the lead for the first time the day before the debate. And then the debate, she had another bump. For whatever reason, I didn't like her performance all that much. Some people, I guess, did. And she won a few votes and kind of took a little bit of a lead. Now that has now basically faded to zero. And we are, I want to say Trump was as low as maybe 42% to win in that measure of mainstream political thoughts and data analysts. It's now up to, I think he's up to 48. So it's not even... It's almost unfair to call it a toss-up. It is legitimately, from that measure, completely up in the air. There are other things to look at, though, right? I mean, I was talking to Glenn, who did some traveling with Donald Trump and events. Glenn Beck, I'm sorry. Yes, I should mention that, even though most people on the Blaze are aware. But yes, Glenn Beck, he did events with Donald Trump over the weekend. And he was just like, the crowds were amazing, and they were so passionate, and they really cared, and they know about policy, and they know all this stuff. And I can't help but think there's some hollow feeling with the support of Harris. Like, it's one of those situations where, like, if you're in the middle and you're not like a hardcore leftist, which obviously you're going to support any Democrat. If you're in the middle, I think there's an element of like, finding, you're dating someone and then all of a sudden you got to make this decision to marry them. And then like, it doesn't sound quite as good. The bar lighting, she looked all right, but now I don't know. The church is well lit. I just feel like I don't know that there's a real passion for Kamala Harris. I think only there's passion against Trump. That might be enough. I mean, the data shows me it very well might be enough, but I'm a bit skeptical of the real solidness of her following.
Well, leave it to CNN to be the outlet that would actually bring us a major disadvantage for Kamala Harris. Let's take a listen.
All right, so party ID nationally. You go to October, November of 2016, Democrats had a 3-point advantage. You go 4 years ago, Democrats had a 6-point advantage. Look at where we are today, Manu. Republicans with a 1-point advantage. A very different picture, very much mirroring what we see in the party registration numbers in those key battleground states, and Pennsylvania in particular.
It actually just shows you, too, why Harris is doing what she's trying to do. She's trying to moderate a little bit on these issues, trying to reach those very voters, because the party registration is changing, and the demographics of the voters are changing. And those are the people she needs to attract.
Absolutely. And the GOP leads by a point in party identification right now. The average when the Republican Party loses is the Democrats ahead by 8. When the Republican Party wins, the average party ID advantage for Democrats is 3. Republicans right now, Manu, are doing even better than the average when they win. If there's one little nugget that I think Republicans are really hopeful for, it's this party ID and this party registration data. It really points in a good direction for them and for Donald Trump.
Wow.
Stu, and when I listen to that, I think back to what we were just talking about with Matthew Peterson, right? And you're like, why is she going on Fox News? Why was Barack Obama out there last week saying, hey, black men, we need to come out and vote for Kamala Harris? To me, it looks like if it's the internal polling that she sees, there's something there that she doesn't like, right? And you see all of these numbers come out again on CNN, not really a friendly news source. What do you make of all that?
And too, on CNN, Harry Enton's pretty good. Like, he's a good sometimes the data versions of these publications are a lot better than the than the news analysts.
And the opinion side.
Yeah. Harry's pretty good, and he lays it out fairly. I think this is a major problem for them. It's not it's a 1-point lead. The Democrats always lead the generic ballot, though. They always are ahead, it seems. I think there was one race since 2000. I want to say it was 2004, where it was either tied or maybe the Republicans had a slight lead. And of course, Republicans wound up winning that election at the White House level. It's a situation where it is very, very close. If you have a polling error going in either direction, you could see easily 300 electoral votes on either side. You could see House control for the Democrats. You could easily see that. You could also see a really nice win for Republicans in the Senate, where you're at maybe 54, 55 seats. It's all on the table here, which is what makes this so fascinating. I do think that there are a lot of these underlying measures that look pretty darn good for Republicans. Republicans have a way, an innate skill to blow these situations, to screw them up.
What?
I know this is shocking.
They do.
For so many. I mean,
this hasn't been my entire life.
I know. You go back and you look at the red wave of 2022, which was enough to at least stop Joe Biden's worst impulses with control of the House, but that was about it. And there were some complaints at the time that Republican polling outfits were flooding these polling averages with sort of cheap polls that look good for Republicans, which moved the polling averages to make people think it was going to be better for Republicans than it actually was. There's some evidence to that, and that may be, there's more Republican polls going on now. These polling averages, though, have kind of figured this out. They look at this and they say, we're only going to take higher quality polls and count them at the highest level. So all these people are trying to correct for these past errors. And this is the one thing that makes me a little nervous about this idea that there's going to be this polling error in the favor of Donald Trump. If that is true, Donald Trump will win easily. If there's a 3-point polling error toward Donald Trump, he's going to win easily. And the polling errors in the past 2 elections when he's run have been larger than that, significantly larger. That being said, these polling outfits try to correct for these things. They try to figure out, well, where did we go wrong last time? How do we correct that for next time? Because they want to be right. These campaigns come to them. They get a bunch of money when they're right. They want to be right on these things. Have they corrected that problem? If so, we are in a razor-thin race.
Well, I look at the internal memo for the Real Clear Politics, and it showed that President Trump is currently running 13 points ahead of where he finished in 2020 with independents. And to me, that's an astonishing number, because everybody knew who Donald Trump was when he ran in 2016. They clearly knew who he was in 2020, and he's actually gaining from where he was even back then. And just explain how difficult that is in politics to be on the stage for as long as he has, to have better numbers right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Everyone knew who Donald Trump was in 2016. You're right about that, but they didn't know who he was as a president, right? They knew him as a TV star. They knew him as a real estate mogul. They knew a lot of things about him. I mean, he was one of the most famous people in the world before he became president. So people definitely knew about the guy.
Yeah.
That being said, it was still more of a situation, I think, in 2016 where they were like, look, we know Hillary Clinton. We know how she would be. We don't want her. Let's just go the other direction. I think that was a good chunk of the reason he won in 2016. In 2020, I mean, there's a way of looking at the 2020 election and saying, hey, we were in the middle of a global pandemic. Things were really ugly.
Yeah.
And he still almost won. I mean, I think people looked at that and said, well, everything was pretty good until 2019. He probably would have won in 2020. The fact that he was that close, even with the pandemic and everything, is actually pretty significant. I think one thing, because you can look at these numbers across the board with minority voters, with younger voters, all these groups, independents, that look better for Donald Trump. And I think most of it is real. I think there has been an actual movement, and Republicans have tried for approximately 1 zillion years to get one black person to vote for them. So this is real progress. Good job, boys and girls. I mean, you're now only down by 41 points among black voters. The one thing I will say, though, that is a little worrisome from this, Jill, is that there is a trade going on. The reason why this race remains close is because Republicans are now attracting voters that are lower income, that are not as suburban, that are minority voters, that are voters, in groups that are not necessarily as reliable a voter. And that's great. You want them on your side. You do. You don't want that necessarily at the expense of some mom in the suburbs who votes every single time, or an older voter above 65, where Kamala Harris's numbers look a little bit better than they have in the past. If you trade those voters out, you're kind of creating you're trading a reliable voter for an unreliable one that might not work out in the future. That being said, look, you want to attract as many voters as you can in as many groups as you can and make those groups competitive. So this is, generally speaking, a good thing with just that little bit of an asterisk.